People ask me what my secret is. They mean well by the question, and I try not to hold it against them. The word secret implies something withheld, something hoarded, some private arrangement with luck or God or genetics that I've been keeping from the general population. I haven't been keeping anything. I've been up here on this mountain doing the same things in the same order every morning for 35 years. And if there is a secret, it is only that consistency is so unglamorous that nobody believes it's the answer. But it is the answer. It is almost always the answer to almost everything. I'm 93 years old. I live at 9,200 feet in Ouray County, Colorado. My nearest neighbor is 4 miles down the road, and we wave when we see each other, which in winter is not often. I have running water and electricity and a wood stove and a shortwave radio and a shelf of maps that covers an entire wall and that I have been adding to since 1955. I have everything I need and a very precise understanding of what that means, which took me most of my life to develop. Let me tell you what I do in the mornings, all of it, in order, without embellishment. Then I'll tell you why I think it works, which is a different conversation, and one I find more interesting. I wake at 5, not with an alarm. I haven't used an alarm since 1987, and I don't intend to start. The body, if you treat it with reasonable respect and keep it on a consistent schedule, will wake itself at the same time with a reliability that would embarrass most mechanical devices. 5 o'clock in Ouray County in January means full dark and temperatures that most people would call extreme. I call it quiet. The distinction matters. The first thing I do before I stand is this. I lie still for approximately 3 minutes, and I account for myself. Not in a spiritual sense. I am not a spiritual man, or rather I am spiritual in a way that has nothing to do with organized religion and everything to do with paying attention to what is actually in front of you. I mean physically. I inventory. Hands. Can I feel them? Can I close them? Feet. Same. Back. Where is the tightness? Is it the same as yesterday or different? Hips, jaw, eyes. 3 minutes every morning. I started doing this in my late 60s when I noticed that the body, past a certain age, begins issuing reports that deserve to be read before you ask it to perform. Ignoring these reports doesn't make them untrue. It just means you discover the truth later, at a less convenient moment. Usually at the bottom of a staircase or in the middle of something that requires your full concentration. I prefer to know what I'm working with before the day begins. After the inventory, I stand, slowly, deliberately, the way I do everything now. Not because I am cautious by nature. I am not. I spent 30 years on terrain that would have killed a cautious man. But because deliberate is different from slow. Deliberate means you are choosing each movement. It means you are present for it. That distinction is, I believe, most of what separates the people who stay sharp into their 90s from the ones who don't. I dress in layers. This is not an affectation of age. I have dressed in layers since my first winter in the field in 1956, when a colleague lost 2 fingers to frostbite because he had dressed for the temperature he hoped for, rather than the temperature that existed. I have thought of him every cold morning for 67 years. He was a good topographer and a poor planner, and the two things coexisted in him the way they often do. I dress for what is, not what I'd prefer. Then I go outside. This is non-negotiable. Every morning, regardless of weather, for 35 years. I go outside before I eat, before I make coffee, before I do anything that happens indoors. I stand on the porch for no less than 10 minutes. In summer, this is pleasant. In winter, this is a practice in maintaining a relationship with reality as it actually is, rather than as seen through glass. I take the Brunton out of my shirt pocket. Brass compass, 1952. given to me by a man named Harold Goss, who ran the USGS field office in Denver, and who told me on my first day that a man who doesn't know where north is has no business telling anyone else what's true about the land. Harold died in 1974. I have carried his compass every day since I received it, which is now 71 years, and I still take a bearing every morning from the porch. Not because I am lost, because knowing where you are is a habit that, in my experience, extends beyond navigation. I look at the mountains, not casually. I actually look at them with attention. I look for what is different from yesterday. New snow on which faces, which trees are moving and which are still, and what that tells me about the wind at elevation. The color of the light on the rock, which changes with season and time and atmospheric conditions in ways I have been cataloging in my mind for 35 years without writing them down, though the catalog is accurate. This is not poetry. This is observation. The distinction again matters. Poetry is about how things make you feel. Observation is about what is actually there. I am interested in both, but I try to keep them in separate rooms. I go back inside at approximately 5:20 and I make coffee. 1 cup, same strength, same process, using a percolator that belonged to my mother and that I have repaired 4 times and that I will continue to repair rather than replace because it works. And because the idea of replacing something that works offends me in a way I cannot fully articulate, but that feels important to honor. While the coffee percolates, I do mental arithmetic. This began as a deliberate practice in my early 80s when I read something. I no longer remember where. I read constantly, and my retention for sources has always been worse than my retention for content, suggesting that mental calculation, specifically calculation without writing anything down, maintains neural pathways in ways that passive reading does not. I cannot verify this claim medically. I can tell you that 30 minutes of mental arithmetic every morning for 12 years has kept me sharp in ways I notice when I occasionally talk to people my age who have not maintained this practice. I work through whatever I feel like. Unit conversions between the imperial and metric systems, which I know both fluently from field work. Distances and elevations from memory. I can tell you the elevation of every significant peak in a 40-mile radius to within 20 feet, and I check myself occasionally with the maps. Sometimes I work backward through dates. Sometimes I do nothing more complicated than long multiplication in my head, 3- and 4-digit numbers, simply because the effort is the point and not the result. The coffee is ready in 12 minutes. I drink it at the table by the east window, which faces the San Juan Range, and for those minutes I do not do anything else. I do not read. I do not calculate. I look at the mountains with the coffee in my hands, and I allow the morning to be what it is without asking anything of it. This may be the most important thing I do. I am aware that it looks like nothing. After coffee, I write. Not a diary. I've kept a field journal since 1955, and the distinction I would draw is this. A diary records how you feel about what happened. A field journal records what happened. Conditions, observations, anomalies, things that don't fit the pattern. I write in the same format I used in the field, because the format still serves me, and because I believe that the discipline of a format is itself part of what keeps the mind organized. I write for 30 minutes, sometimes more if something is worth pursuing, never less. Then I eat. Oatmeal in winter, eggs in the other seasons, from 4 hens I keep in a coop 20 feet from the back door that I have maintained in continuous operation since 1991. The hens are not the original hens. I am not unclear on the biology, but the coop is original, and the routine is original. And the hens understand the routine as well as hens can be said to understand anything, which is better than most people give them credit for. I eat without reading, without the radio, without anything except the food and the window and whatever is happening outside it. I learned to eat this way in the field, where meals were often brief and conditions often demanded your full attention, and you learned quickly to be present for whatever was in front of you, or you missed things that mattered. I have simply never stopped. By 7 o'clock in the morning, I have been outside in the cold, taken a bearing, observed the mountains with genuine attention, done 30 minutes of mental arithmetic, written in my journal, and eaten a meal with full presence. And I have done these things in the same order, at the same pace, for 35 years. People hear this and say, doesn't it become rote? Don't you stop noticing? Don't you need variety, stimulation, novelty? The mountains provide variety. In 35 years of looking at the same range from the same porch, I have never seen the same morning twice. The light on the 14ers in October when the first snow has fallen above 12,000 feet, but the lower slopes are still in color. I have seen that 25 times, and it has not once been the same. If you are looking at the same thing every day and finding it repetitive, you are not looking. You are glancing, which is a different activity and a much less useful one. Novelty is the refuge of people who have not learned to pay attention to what is already there. This is a strong opinion, and I hold it without apology. I should tell you about the other things, the ones that happen after 7, and that are less about routine and more about what I've built up here in 35 years. I maintain the property myself, not heroically. I know my limits, and I have learned, slowly and with some resistance, to work within them. But I do what I can do, which is still considerable, and I ask for help with what I cannot, which costs me less pride than it used to. The physical work is not optional. A body that stops doing physical work does not gradually slow. It drops, and the drop is faster than anyone who hasn't watched it expects. I split wood in shorter sessions than I did at 70. I take breaks I wouldn't have taken at 60. The work still gets done. I read every afternoon, broadly without a curriculum, following interest rather than obligation. I have read my way through most of the USGS archive available in print. I have read most of the serious literature on Colorado mining history, which is where the cartography and the human story intersect in ways I find genuinely moving. I read whatever the library in Ridgway sends me through their mail program, which a librarian named Donna has been managing with remarkable patience for 14 years. I read things I disagree with. I read things that are difficult. I believe that reading only things you find congenial is a form of self-administered stupidity, and I try to avoid it. I talk to people, less than I used to, more than most people assume. My daughter Frances calls on Sundays from Portland. She is 64 years old and still finds my living situation alarming, which I find endearing. I tell her what I saw on the porch in the morning. She tells me about her week. We disagree about whether I should have a medical alert device, which I do not have and will not have, and which I tell her I understand the argument for, even as I reject it. We have been having this same argument for 7 years, and I expect we will have it for whatever years remain. And I have come to understand that the argument itself is an act of love on her part, and I try to receive it as such. What I think is actually happening in these mornings, and I want to be precise here because I've had 35 years to think about it, is this. The body needs to be asked to do things, not punished, not pushed past reason, not treated like a machine that can be run at capacity indefinitely, but asked, consistently and specifically asked, every morning, to be present and functional and engaged. The body responds to this the way it responds to most reasonable requests, not always easily, not always immediately, but with a reliability that accumulates over time into something that looks, from the outside, like exceptional health. The mind is the same. It needs to be asked. It needs arithmetic and observation and the discipline of a journal and 30 minutes of genuine coffee drinking without distraction. It needs to look at a mountain range for 35 years and understand that there is still something new to see in it. What it does not need, and I say this with the authority of someone who has conducted a long experiment with a sample size of 1, is protection from difficulty. The mind is not sharpened by being shielded from cold mornings and hard problems and long silences. It sharpens by being asked to meet them. I am 93 years old. I took a bearing this morning at 5:15, and I knew exactly where I was. I have known exactly where I was for a very long time. The Brunton is back in my shirt pocket. It will be there tomorrow morning at 5:15, same as always. When the mountains are dark and the temperature is what it is, and the day begins again the same way it always begins, with me stepping outside to see what's actually there. That's the whole of it. There is no other secret.